in terms of caring, we have our rate has dropped from 58.1% to 52%, and in terms of recommending as a place to work, that's dropped from 62.4% to 57.1%. Although these rates have declined nationally, it's still a concern to us as an organisation. Other areas that have been highlighted by staff where we need to pay more attention is around recognition and reward, staff well-being, and also bullying and harassment. We have focused on bullying and harassment through our Enough is Enough campaign. You will see from the papers that you receive very, very marginal shift in bullying and harassment. Nothing that's worth celebrating. However, we need to continue on that journey of reducing bullying and harassment within our organisation. We will be reporting through the People Committee in May in terms of how we'll be responding to the staff survey from a local perspective and also from a corporate perspective. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions?
I don't have questions. I just kind of want to reinforce that, while we're in the public arena, our commitment to want to improve the experience for everybody that works in the team, not just you. And I've continued commitment to really get behind our anti-racist and anti-discriminatory piece, because I think that really speaks to what we're hearing in the office. And I think whilst Patrick's right, if we look at the metrics around workload and well-being and satisfaction and pay and recognition around quality, all of those have dropped nationally. But I don't think that's important. I think what's important is that we have an absolute need and a duty to do our best by the 4,500 people that we're here for. So I think and that's really the communication that Patrick's already put out around this, is that we recognise that this is telling us there is still a great deal to do. We are open to and want to hear from as many people as possible about. So we did put a question in this year. If there's one thing that the organisation could do in the context, we've got very few comments that I think we can take forward as ideas. We've got more things like pay us more and those sorts of things, which, as we all know, are out of our hands. But and that's where the majority of the current comments are. There are a few things that I think we need that. So we do want to do more work around that. And I think there is also something about being able to, the conversations that those of us that have been involved in looking at pretext around how do we create more opportunities to enter into the kind of conversations that Jazz was just talking about as well, with small groups of staff, with teams, and with individuals. So that's where we'll be concentrating a lot of our thinking and our planning around our accessibility to hear and respond to other people's thinking in the team around what more we can do.
Yeah, certainly agree. I'll make my comments. Are there any other comments? I think I echo what Rasheen has just said, and it's always disappointing to see the staff survey which isn't great, and it's really telling us what our staff feel about their experience of work from here to trust. One thing that I think our as a group can actually do is just to be more visible. And I know there's a programme David Hans put together in terms of board visits, and just on my scheduled visits that I've done over the past few weeks, couple of months, it really makes a difference. What makes a difference? It's not the platitude, it's not just kind of, it's nice to see you and so forth. But when concerns are raised, and you should know that I do listen, and try and respond. I don't make promises, but even if my response isn't necessarily what they want to hear, they know that they've actually been heard and we respond back into those kind of things. And also just kind of our recognition and our well-being offer to do as much as we possibly can to extend that, to send a very clear message, which we are, clear message of our colleagues, our staff are our greatest assets, and we're going to do all that we possibly can do our gift to support them to carry out their work, carry out their jobs, to the best of their ability, with our support and kind of addressing some of those issues which Jazz spoke about as well. So we just have to continue doing this and sort of getting the messages out, being visible as well. So it makes a difference also.
Just a quick question, apologies for that, but there's a huge amount of data here in obviously Jazz's presentations and how we actually triangulate what Jazz was talking about with what the staff have been saying. What's the next steps in terms of how do we translate all of this data into an action plan from a trust, from a board perspective, and how we sort of disseminate some of those key messages down. But more importantly, I get the sense, and I've only been here 30 seconds, I get the sense that we've been sort of chipping away at this previous years. So what are we going to do differently? So I'm not after the answer now, but I guess in that action plan of development, we need to think, well, okay, what's worked, what hasn't worked, what is it that we need to do differently? And I know there was a responsibility thing, which we can all do, but I think there's probably a lot more stuff that we can do, and that whole thing around accountability, everybody needs to take responsibility for this. It's not just a board thing. This.
Yeah. So really good question. I mean, that's one of the reasons why it's actually like saying that many teams to receive individual responses, because that from 60 to 90 is quite significant. And we also see the nature of the questions that are asked. For example, one of the areas where we do have some concerns around compassionate leadership. The question is about, do you feel that your line manager is compassionate? Do you feel that you work in a team that is compassionate? So I think it's important that individual teams really focus on what it's like to work within that team. Because when people report incivility, they're reflecting on the experience of working in that environment on a day-to-day basis. So that's where we're going to have the biggest difference in terms of experience working in the organisation. The focus from a corporate perspective is really what the work that we've been focusing on around bullying, harassment, and the work around how to ensure that we create the right environment for colleagues from different backgrounds to thrive within the organisation. We can do that to support our local teams, but ultimately it's ensuring that we have local accountability. The more we see teams coming through, getting individual feedback and supporting them, I think that's really, that's the difference that we're going to make compared to the previous years.
Just add to that, I think some of the things that we've learned is that actually thinking about this in an action plan orientated way hasn't got us to where we need to get to. This is really about a major cultural shift. And so what we need to be doing corporately needs to be very much around how we support and getting that right culture that is like what we're expecting to see, and how we support individuals to come forward. So our freedom to speak up is really, really important in this, because what we don't want to be in a position is that we only really give people an opportunity once a year to tell us what their experiences are like. So how do we use our and whilst it's great that we're seeing an increase in the number of people coming forward, we need to get to the point, and so what is that money? So that we can have a sharing back of actually coming forward matters, because it can make a difference, and this is the kind of difference it can make. And we've had some of those stories, but not enough of those yet. So I think they're the things that we need really to and we need to dispel some of the myths. So I think I've already pointed out, and I think in the commentary, we've got some perceptions about the messages we're giving, leading to, now resulting in certain things where actually our data is telling us it's exactly not the case. This is not the case. So how are we going to be able to evidence some of that for people so that they understand why why we're going on the journeys that we are, continuing to use our data to support the work that we do.
Yeah, I just want to add to that we do have some teams that are doing really well. So sometimes when you look at it in this context, it's very easy to forget that. And we want to ensure that we start to share some of that good practice, celebrating those teams, but also telling their story about how they've managed to achieve the level staff experience that they have achieved. So that will really help. And in the paper, it does describe for specific themes, example like eugenic care with recognition has significantly gone up. The same with bullying harassment in some of the divisions of directors as well. So we need to do more of that. Recently, we did a listen applied, and we committed to bringing some of those teams who've done really well to do listen applied to talk about their story.
And that's absolutely the key thing. This is where you really make it difficult and you want to, etc. It's got to be really analytical. There are some examples of that. We just capture that. This is dangerous when you send the message out. First, we do really well. I'm not sure I can do anymore. It feels like it's an overall fix. People drag that and those kind of later. So it's how we get the balance of encouraging and highlighting that, as well as trying to move. For me, it's always been the divergence between things. It's really important.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so we've got a few governance papers.
Yes, which have come for approval.
They're just for
or ratification.
Yes, so we have the Board of Directors and Committee schedule to come for approval. Board of Directors for planning, and also the Board of Directors terms of reference, and then the draft governance statement as well. So those four items there, if I can just, if you don't mind, David, if I can just ask, everybody's had an opportunity to read them. Can we approve the schedule? Yeah.
Just one quick thing to note on this on the schedule
Yeah.
is around the commissioning board. It holds every month. The question to the board is: do we need to make it face to face as it is today, or do we need to alternate between face to face and virtual? Because next meeting is on the 3rd of May. Thank you.
And that's the same day as our strategic.
Yeah, that's it.
Which should be face to face. That would be my view. The strategic session should be the face to face.
I think that's face to face.
Okay, that's fine.
So we're approving that. And then the forward planner.
For the forward planner, there are a couple of things to note. One is the commissioning bath, which will definitely be coming here. So the plan is for the two baths to come here so that we could see how the cross-reference. And then also we're also introducing the corporate racial register this year as well. Yeah. And then the patient safety report, which was what Lisa just brought as well. And then there's also some reflection around page 2 around enabling the board to have visibility of action plans that are being implemented across the organization, so that they come here even just for noting at least. And then the other point is around externally commissioned reports that the board needs to have sight of, just even for noting. Yeah.
Definitely, we're in approval with that as a board. And then the terms of reference.
The terms of reference, on page 2, I just identify one little thing there, which is around holding month, that the board will hold monthly, which is supposed to be bi-monthly under section 5. So it just need a minor tweak there, which will be bi-monthly.
Yeah.
And then on 7.2, it says members shall exclude themselves who have any material element around conflict of interest. But that may be intriguing. So the solution there will be around having a sensible and pragmatic approach to tackling that on the case by case basis. For example, we may have the member of the board who's completed to participate in the discussion and inform the discussion, but abstain during decision making, rather than have them abstain to the total.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm just going to rephrase that already.
Yes,
Yeah.
The subject.
Yes, subject.
And I'm sure we're going to talk about that as well. And then the draft annual governance statement. The
draft annual governance statement, I've not included it here, but again, it's just in the draft format, and I'm still working on it. So yeah, so I'll definitely be coming back with it. But I just wanted to give the board a heads up that we are on track to delivering the governance statement within our annual report and accounts.
Okay. And then we're almost at the bottom of the agenda now. So it's really questions from governors and the public in relation to anything that's been discussed today on our agenda. Yeah.
So if we go back to I was talking about the staff survey and jazz. So I think the trustees are doing as much as they can. I think they're big commitments, but I think when you try and employ them at a local level, I'm just going to say it as it is, and forgive me, it's a little bit meaningless when you open your laptop and it feels really hopeful, enough is enough, and say no to racism, wear our badge. But then when you try and actually say enough is enough, you hear, oh, we can't do that, we're not allowed. And so then that's that frustration with colleagues when, so to give an example, we had a patient that had inside capacity. It was a long day patient on one of our wards who was racially targeting one of our nursing staff. And her experience was getting to a point where she said, I can't face this day in, day out. And so the recommendation was, well, let's move the nurse. And so, let's do some positive behavioural work with the patient. Let's have, a commitment to say, actually, this behaviour can't continue, and actually we'll remove you. And the pushback was, no, we can't do that, really. Well, we can, because we've been told enough is enough and zero tolerance. You can't do that, can't move a patient, And so I guess for me, I would like further commitment that says, and obviously there are times when a patient genuinely does not have capacity, particularly if the patient has dementia, or but this patient did, it was assessed the patient had capacity. And so, you feel like you're stepping out on a limb, to say, we are moving the patient. The staff member did go sick for a period of time and then came back. And it just all felt out of process, and it felt, there was that vulnerability for the staff member, for the team that was making those decisions. But just holding that now, the team said we can say this is enough, zero tolerance, so let's do it. But I would have preferred for the team at that time to say, this is what we have in writing, this is what it actually looks like. It's not just words on a screen when we open our laptop, it's more meaningful than that. So I guess it's just, what does it actually mean in practice? When you say that we can take that approach, when we say zero tolerance, when we say enough is enough, actually galvanising us to say we can do something in practice about that.
I think this is really, I think it's a fantastic live example of things that we hear. I think that's why we really want to be in that position of being absolutely clear about we are continuing to be committed to this journey, but equally, how do we support local teams to stand up to and consider in a way that it's, I'm a bit unclear about whether or not what you described is, we had that conversation, we got the no, but we got there in the end, or the no.
Because it felt like we've never done this before, we've never moved a patient, the bed manager was like, we can't do that, you know, we can't move a patient, you know, it's unheard of. And I said, well, we can, because, you know, we've assessed the patient, we've done a positive behavioural, you know, session with the patient, we've put it into writing, we've given it to you, we've said, you know, we're not going to tolerate this anymore, you know, and you understand this. And so we had those conversations. It wasn't, we just said to the patient, one more and you're out kind of thing. You know, we worked with the patient to help them to understand that we weren't going to tolerate any more racial abuse of our colleague. And he continued to target her. And so we arranged for the patient to be transferred to another ward.
So I think that's a really fantastic example of the kind of thing that Patrick was saying we want to share, because whilst your experience was that it felt really difficult to do it, we know that the more of those challenging conversations we have, the more examples we'll get of it actually working. But without, we're not going to get through it without difficult conversations. So I think it's a great example of where leadership prevailed and worked with the team to get the right result.
Yeah, so I guess that for other people, it may not feel as comfortable, or might feel that when you get the no, it's like, oh, okay, we don't do that then. So, you know, I was in a role as an interim head of nursing and felt actually I can, you know, say actually we're going to pursue that. It may not feel for a ward manager to say I'm going to pursue that if there's nothing in more recognising a policy or a guideline that says this is what we mean when we say it.
Or the
This is what
story, holding the story up as this is what we want more of.
Yeah.
This is what we want. We want these conversations to be happening consistently and constantly in the organisation. So I think there's something about that very real experience, being able to use that and bring that as part of the, this is what we mean.
I just want to bring that in this Patrick.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're asking for seems to be is really practical. Like, you know, what are practical ways we would expect people to translate what we're saying is a policy decision into practice with clear examples about how you want to do it. And I can imagine this is one of the examples that have come up quite a lot across the system, because of the nature of the number of times people said that they've been harassed by colleagues or patients for killed. And I would think that's one of the things we need to do is start describing. So what this means in practice, if you're in this situation, I don't know whether we have red cards there. In other hospitals, they have red card, you know, we would go through a process where you red card your patient at the end, because in the end, the behaviour was unacceptable. It's going to be different in mental health services, of course. But actually, the nature of what we're saying is, you know, have we got courage of our convictions to follow it through to that process, or to understand what that might mean, because it is different. But I think we do need to follow through with, when we're implementing policies such as these, start to think, well, actually, so now we need to translate what that could look like. When we're doing the policy, and that's really happy to price that, yeah.
And Patrick.
Yeah, so I think it's a really important point, but as you can imagine, that in any policy, you can never come up with every scenario that people come across. And that's a real example of how do you translate policy into, I think, into reality, into application of it. And it reminds me of when you're on call, you can never predict what's going to come up, but you can have action cards, as in when this has come up before, it's actually how others have dealt with it. So there's some learning there about how do we use stories like that. Just create action cards, because yeah, you never know what you're going to come across. But if you're kind of looking at it through the lens of our values, you always come up to the right decision for the patient.
But I think that relates back to, so when the board are trying to do really well at tackling this, and that, you know, I see that, you know, you're really exhausting and thinking in terms of how do we really, you know, make it a better organisation. So when Jazz referred to a diverse panel, so if I'm a recruiting manager and I'm a racist and I recruit a Black or Asian person, and the mitigation was I had a Black or Asian person on the panel, but you haven't tackled me, and then you have to work for me, but I haven't been tackled. I haven't improved your experience of working under me. That's the problem, I guess. That hasn't helped. In fact, that's made it worse because you're more likely to get recruited because we've got a fairer panel, but your experience is not going to change because you haven't changed me. And so it's a great endeavour to think about fairer recruitment. We're not really changing the people that we're working with. And so I know I keep banging this drum, but we've got to think about the vital standard training, make it a mandated process and saying, you know, it's part of traffic light, you've got to attend it. And so, you know, those people that are never going to change are never going to change. It's certainly going to change some people in terms of their thinking and their behaviours. So those things will be more meaningful in terms of local action. And so you said it yourself, Rasheen, you know, the experience is not changing, so our approach has got to change.
I think that's been a really valuable challenge. I think there's an action there as well for us to take back, and you've got us to think just kind of on a local level, even though what we're doing from a board perspective. I have heard that on some of my visits, that often we can put, you know, policies in place and certain programs and actions, but it's how it's translated, you know, within the services and whether people are actually taking those on board. And that example that you've given there initially was, look, you can't, you're not taking it on board, but having those kind of live examples, as Machines just said, and being very, very clear that this is what we mean by this particular approach that we're taking, by the fact that we've got, you know, anti-racist campaign, anti-bullying, whatever that may be. This is how it actually translates on a day-to-day basis in a given scenario or circumstance. So thank you for that. Thank you for, you know, that push. I think that's something else that we can.
I think we, you know, we've identified that we need stories that bring things alive. And I think you've brought it alive really well. And sharing that story in some way, we can think through about what are the different mediums that we can do that through, so that, you know, more people get to hear it. Because your point about what if they aren't seeing you, well, if they hear about how the team were impacted and the fact that this is what we need and want, it can inspire people to do the same thing, but also to know where to go when they're getting a block. And I think on the point about the fact that, you know, we've got people that will play the game and do what's right, but actually not. I think there's often a sort of sense that we know who those people are and we don't. And so we need everybody in there, you know, if you're in your local senior teams, in your local, if you're really thinking that you've got someone like that, then you need to let us know. Because actually we need to give an opportunity for that development. And if that doesn't work, then there's another road we can go down. But we need everybody to take a bit of responsibility for identifying who those people are, so that we can do the work that will help us not continue being in that situation that we focus on.
Thank you. Michelle?
Yes, thank you. I'm very grateful, Leona, my colleague here, because she came in about 6-7 months ago as a clinical governor for staff, because she bringing fresh ideas and we reach her. And as the trust we involved in and bringing Maxine, Lorraine here as they are PA to some of the executive, it's a good way of doing it. And showing compassion, as Linda shared, her compassion. Compassion is to where Phil saw those two people grieving doesn't cross the boundaries. So when you said Val and Winston are grieving, and bring it closer to me, I felt, your grieving, my grieving, no different. So just want to share those things. And about the patient story, patient lived experience, those who've been through stuff, who know stuff, who want to change the stuff. It's about the jewel of insight and wisdom we bring from the cave of suffering. So I want to salute the team for doing that. Another thing, I'll ask the question of what Anne and Winston was saying about well-being, the staff and the new recruit. Because to me, it's fundamental. When you put a seed or you grow something, you have to cultivate. And in India, when I was a child, I was laboring with my grandfather. We used to plant mango tree, other tree. We used to put a fence around it, water them, and because the environment and the animal, when they grow after 4 or 5, let everything, because they're used to it. So that's, I would say, to fundamental staff. If you look after them for 3 or 4 years, and they'll work forever. And there's research going on in that. So my question was, what Jazz said is opens my eyes. And Lisa report was very impartial, very open, and we can learn from it. And Jazz said, what we can, if you can see it visually, I can do it as well. When first person done the mile, nobody, even the doctor said your physical, your blood pressure, and same years, 4 people, now they're breaking the 3-4 minute a mile, and now everybody doing it. So if you can see it, and my question to you is this survey is because the staff, we are below 20%, now we are below 8 out of 9 average. And our community mental health patient survey, we are below 11 out of 20 or 20. If we have this, now we want to invent new wheel. I'm asking you, is there any way other trusts are doing better than us? Why we are here, or why you want to take it over there? Well, we don't want to invent new wheel because I just look at a role model here, or just practice. So my question is, how are we gonna just do one number, 8 this year, 7 next year? How would you do it?
I mean, your point about learning from others is really well made. And I love the analogies you give us that help us picture what it is that we're trying to do. But the learning from others is really clear that actually this bit's about tackling the culture is what makes the biggest difference, both from a quality point of view, as well as from an overall staff wellbeing point of view. So I think we have to continue to learn and ask others what they're doing, but the majority of those conversations lead us to that particular road and lead us to an understanding that it will take time. And that, the point that Leon just helps, help illustrate that actually when we've got pockets of really great practice about putting into action the things that we're saying we want to do as an organisation, celebrating them, highlighting them, and supporting others to do likewise. So it becomes the way we do things around here rather than not the way we have to push against in order to get there.
100%. You some team, they're doing amazing. As Patrick said, we should celebrate as well. Why there are only 10 people. They take less sickness, but they're supporting each other. Why we need to show that, highlight to other teams as well.
Well, thank you everybody, and thank you, our governors that pose those questions.
Sorry, it was really brief, but under the patient safety report, there was reference to 2 niche reviews. I think one of which you said was going to be finished in July. I just wondered, are those publicly available?
Well, that one isn't because it's not published in June, and the other one isn't. I don't know whether Sarah knows.
Sarah's gone.
Oh, she's gone. Okay. I haven't got the date in my head, but they've both been undertaken. They aren't in the public domain yet. But the one associated with the stabbings is to be published in June. The other one is a report into homicides that happened a long time ago, and it's about whether or not, how much the learning has been taken into account, and I don't know the date of publication for that, so.
But when they are published, are they public?
Yes, absolutely.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you, members of the public, for your questions, and governors for your questions. Just finally, just to say, under any other business, that we've got an extraordinary board meeting, scheduled on 21st of June, 2 till 2:35, and that's just to ratify the annual reporting plans from 2020. That's it, for that concludes the public board meeting today. Thanks, everybody.